Is it Kanban or Kanban? If you're pulling the word from its original Japanese origin, it's definitely Kanban. But this is besides the point, because regardless of how it's pronounced, let's talk about how it works. During this video, I'll provide practical advice that you can use within your team to speed up development with this way of working and operating model. This intro has been in progress way too long, so let's throughput to the next content.
Have you ever wondered how to streamline your workflow and increase efficiency within your team? Meet Kanban, a method from Toyota's process. It promotes real-time communication and transparency. Work is represented on a Kanban board. Intrigued? Let's dive deeper into how Kanban works. At the heart of Kanban is the Kanban board. It's a tool that aids teams in visualizing their tasks, limiting ongoing work, and enhancing productivity. Whether tangible with sticky notes or digital, it's the comprehensive reference for a team's work. Acting like a mirror, it depicts the workflow and allows the team to grasp the picture. It encourages transparency and collaboration. Now that we the board, let's see what goes on it. Work in progress, or YP, is a crucial element in Kanban. It's about managing active tasks effectively. Visualize an overloaded table of tasks. Daunting, right? Kanban limits work in progress, preventing overload, ensuring quality. Imagine a tidy table, each task well-focused. When work in progress is controlled, efficiency increases. With WIP under control, let's see how Kanban adapts to changes. Change is inevitable, but Kanban is ready for it. As we navigate projects, shifts in priorities are routine, but Kanban thrives in this, owing to its inherent adaptability. It graciously embraces changes in the backlog. Teams nimbly reorganize tasks, keeping essential work at the front. In the stringent world of project management, Kanban's flexibility feels like a fresh breeze. And that's the beauty of Kanban: simplicity, visibility, and flexibility. So, what have we learned about Kanban today? It's a visual, adaptable, and efficient work methodology. Founded in manufacturing, it's now revolutionizing software development. Try it and experience a transformative effect on your team's efficiency. Thanks for tuning in.
I want to thank everybody for making it this far in the video. Remember, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, like this video. Continues more content going forward. Now, let's get back into the topic. So remember, this is about Kanban here, and so we'll go over a quick overview of what this is. This is an advanced course, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. And then also I'm going with some misconceptions with Kanban that often come with the operating model. And so you can see here, here's my Kanban board within Jira. And you can see here, the idea is there's a big backlog of work and the teams take from the top. This is the highest priority. And when they're done with their work, they pull in another piece of work here. So that's the idea here. And this is supposed to be a continuous flow. So there's always work piled up in the backlog. People are pulling from the top because that's the highest priority, and then they're completing it. So you can see here, this is a board too that needs to be modified to your team's context. So there might be different stages or different columns that are needed to making sure you're visualizing the pieces of information or the statuses that is important for your team. And so going here with, this is the top level overview, I kind of want to go over some misconceptions because there are some things that come up with different operating models, and especially Kanban, I think it's the most, has the most misconceptions. And so the first thing here is that no story points needed, hashtag no estimates, right? So this is something that has come up a lot as far as it's easier, there's no story points. That's true, but I still think that there is still some rationale at time boxing the user stories or the work within that team. So for example, maybe a user story or a piece of work is not supposed to go longer than 2 weeks or no longer than 1 week. 1 week. That helps with the variability within those user stories. It's not mandatory, but I think it's important to make it easier for your team to be aligned on, that work. And then understanding that there is metrics, the cumulative flow diagram, the control chart that you can use. It's covered in another video that you can see actually how long it takes. And so you could say, hey, it takes about, one story is taking about 1 week. You have 10 stories, and take 10 weeks to complete that. So that's kind of the type of mentality that time box stories comes into play versus nothing, no rules on that as the estimates. No metrics or reports needed. So obviously this is something here. We're going to work as we go. We don't need a plan. We're doing Kanban here. I think that is also a misconception, is that you often need to track, your team and what you're doing. And I think Kanban maybe is a way for teams to kind of fall back into something that a little bit more open. But really, Kanban takes more discipline than actual Scrum, because there isn't really defined cadence meetings that are actually still needed, those types of meetings. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And so just to add on to that, what are some metrics that for Kanban that are important? Well, cumulative flow diagram. So in the metrics video that I have, cumulative flow diagram is really important. Knowing how to read these are also just as important. WIP limits, setting WIP limits is important as well to increase throughput. And the last one is a control chart, right? That kind of helps with understanding how long those stories are taking, so you can estimate and plan for the future. So another misconception is no fixed delivery dates. So this is something that, when is it going to get done? It'll get done when it gets done, right? So, but there's still some communication with external stakeholders, maybe your customers, on when things will be done, so they can plan for budget or plan for incorporating those features. So important that there's actually is fixed delivery dates. You can say, hey, you know what, we have this group of work, we need to complete this feature by this date, and have a fixed delivery date of that work, right? So that is an option with Kanban that I think is a misconception as well. No planning needed. This is a big one here. We're using Kanban, we're pulling in as we need it, and once we get it done, it'll be done. There's still some planning that's needed. So whether you actually formally have a meeting or you do it informally, that's up to you and your team. But really, this still is needed. So even if you're on sprint planning, someone has to create that group of work and plan for how that's going to encompass and aggregate together into that ultimate feature. And then you also have the coordination between the parties that have different skill sets to actually complete that. So there is planning needed. It's just maybe done ad hoc as needed instead of on a certain cadence every 1 week, every 2 weeks, every month. Backlog refinement not needed. This is also false as well, because how is that backlog, if we go back to the board here, how is this actually backlog created? Well, it's created because you need to talk to somebody to understand what is required, and then making sure it's aligned with what needs to be done for that feature or that end goal. So someone needs to be doing this work. It's just maybe not a dedicated meeting on the calendar. It's done as needed, or maybe with the right parties. Maybe that person schedules it with those appropriate parties versus everybody. So this is also, I think, a misconception. Another misconception is demo retrospectives non-existing. I think actually this is still important. Having visibility into the stakeholders, the product owners, the customers sometimes, to actually get feedback in that what the team is building. And so how do you do that without something, a demo or some kind of meeting to actually have that and present that? And so it is needed, but it's done ad hoc. So remember, this is a little bit more flexible with the teams, which means there's a little more discipline, but really the idea is that you set it up as needed. And then also the retrospectives. How you can be flexible when you're not looking at what you've done in the past to improve in the future. You're not being flexible, you're being inflexible actually. And so really important that you get you're still doing some retrospectives as needed. How are you supposed to get all of these great items from the team back in and added into the backlog if you're not looking at it and spending the time to actually do that discussion? Still needed, just done ad hoc. DSU is not needed. Another misconception as well. I think these are very important as things change. Ideas and thoughts that we thought before we created those user stories of the backlog item are now obsolete. They change. You need to have a cadence to talk with the team, to organize and communicate the differences and changes so you can be flexible to making sure you're successful. So I think the daily stand-ups are still needed. I think they should still be time boxed though, 15 minutes or less, to kind of get that cross communication, then have those side discussions as needed. But you have everyone in the team there to have the discussion. So these are the Kanban misconceptions. Again, these are things that you should use in depending on your team, and incorporate as needed. And remember, this is a more, I think, advanced for the teams because it takes more discipline to actually know when do I need these items, these backlog refinements, these planning meetings, to making sure we're successful within the group. So that's a very important question that only comes with experience. And so that's kind of where I say this is more of an advance. It is much quicker though. So if you are planning on doing this and you are an experienced team, you'll be able to actually produce more of that work because there's less time for things that are not needed. And on top of that, you're minimizing interactions only as needed basis versus on a cadence. So hope you like this video. Please subscribe to this video. Please like it as well. And I'll see you in the next video.